US Virgin Islands are considered among the pearls of the Caribbean. The stunning scenery a magnet for tourists from around the world. But beyond the white sand beaches and the turquoise waters, all is not well. The islands still haven't fully recovered from the two powerful hurricanes which tore through here in September 2017. And many of the islanders believe their plight has been ignored by the outside world. Is this America's forgotten paradise? Hurricane Irma hit the Virgin Islands on September the 6th. 2 weeks later, Hurricane Maria picked up where Irma had left off. Both were Category 5, the highest classification of storm.
You could hear it coming, you see the destruction, and you had to run.
It was very scary. So I put my hands to my head and I prayed to God.
The truth is, once disasters leave the daily television, people think it's over.
Texas would not be waiting 2 years to have schools rebuilt in the manner that we are, or neither would Florida.
September 13th was the last time I think St. Thomas was mentioned on the map. I think we've been completely forgotten.
Hilda Daniel and her granddaughter Imani rode out both hurricanes in a specially built shelter next to Hilda's home.
These we can take apart. One went that way, one stayed here, and the cot came this way, and if you have to, just to sit on or throughout the storm.
So you stayed here right through the storm, night and day?
Yeah, and we had a dog with us. So you just stay put. Then we have a little, what do you call it? A little stove that we could...
The camping stove.
Across there, and boil water, get coffee or whatever, soup during the day, and that's it.
So you had everything you needed?
Exactly.
It gets
blankets, pillows, everything.
Yeah, it was kind of like camping, you know, but it gets really hot in here. There's no air coming in and out. And then it's just loud. You just hear the craziest sounds and you're in a very dark, small box.
Most people didn't have a shelter to go to. They just had to sit tight as the hurricanes battered their homes.
In here is my bedroom. I'm living light because there's my bucket to catch my water when it rains.
All this time later, Lavreen Reed is still waiting for a repair team to get to her.
When it rains constantly, it leaks in my bedroom. It drips up other parts of the house, but my room basically runs. Otherwise than that, it's okay.
How stressful is that?
I try not to stress. I just take it one day at a time and say one day. But they say free. Free, 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 free. I am learning the patience of free. If I had my own money, I'd have fixed it myself. But as a retiree, financially, no.
This is the aftermath of Irma and Maria on this apartment block. These residences really didn't stand a chance, and the people living in them just had to get out. There wasn't much time to salvage anything. You can see there are still clothes strewn around here. There's a television, a record player out here, a stove and a fridge. And you'd be forgiven for thinking this had all happened a couple of days ago. not back in September 2017. The scene is almost frozen in time. It's an illustration of just how much work is needed to get these islands back to normal.
My name is Jay Rollins. I'm the Executive Director of the St. Croix Long-Term Recovery Group. We are focused on hurricane recovery efforts in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We are seeing a very slow recovery from this storm. We see a large number of families still living under a tarp roof. The tarps are designed to last for 6 months, not 18 months. There's a lot of stress, fear, and anxiety among the residents. We live on an island, so as opposed to the mainland United States, getting supplies and volunteers and basically all the things that make a recovery a little easier stateside, we don't have the option. We may be a territory and we may be a small island, but that doesn't take away from the suffering and the distress and the impact of that hurricane. It's kind of a fight to make sure that we're still on the radar.
The recovery operation began almost immediately. There's still no end in sight.
Good afternoon, everyone. We started this project 3 days ago? This last Monday. Okay. We were at another project that we'll finish up on Thursday before this.
Grimilda Quinones' roof was blown off in the storms. Today, at last, she's getting a new one.
How's the noise level?
Oh, good.
Yeah, because it means progress, right?
Yes, progress.
Yeah,
yes,
you
a
hear
lot of progress.
right.
They have been
You hear
working
the
really
hammer,
hard.
you know they're working. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was an awful nice and very, very scary, because at that time I thought that when that roof was going, I was going with it. It was very scary. So I put my hands to my head and I prayed to God to, save me from it all. But I spent it right there in the house when everything blew up.
And what's it been like, not having a roof?
Horrible. Because every time it rained, I have to be putting buckets all over the place, to catch the water so it wouldn't go on the floor. And mopping every day with a mop, mopping, especially in the kitchen area. And, oh, look, that's an iguana. You know why it came there to her? Because I feed them, so she probably come to see if that was me there. That's a little one.
90% of homes on the island of St. Croix were damaged by the hurricanes. An army of volunteers has been helping repair them.
I'm from Florida, and Irma hit us after it came here, but it was a lot stronger here. And so it took a lot of this. On this particular house, this whole back roof was removed. I mean, it was gone. So there was nothing here at all, and she had direct access raining in her house. So it's amazing the amount of power that it took, it took off all the roofs.
I think maybe they've been ignored. I'm from Florida, and I know we have issues from hurricane damage as well, but I think it's kind of forgotten because it's an island out in the ocean, and it's not one of the U.S. 50 states. But it is part of the U.S., so we can't forget about them.
You know what I think happens is that the next disaster always pushes the previous ones out of the picture, and we're small. When the storm left us and hit Puerto Rico's so much a larger presence. So many more Puerto Ricans living in the States that really got a lot of the attention and needed a lot of attention. But in the midst of that, we do get lost at times. And then there's been so many disasters that same year and afterwards that I think most people feel, oh, I thought you were recovered by now. And the truth is, once disasters leave the daily television, people think it's over. It's like, well, that was so long ago. Why are you still having problems? And the reality is, it takes a while to rebuild. It takes a good long while to rebuild.
It doesn't help that the islands have very little influence on the national stage. They're not allowed to take part in US presidential elections, for example. The relationship between these islands and the mainland United States is a complicated one. Until 1917, they were actually part of Denmark. The Americans paid the princely sum of $25 million for them. Now they're a US territory, and the people living here are American citizens. But many feel that the Washington establishment isn't really aware of their needs, and in some cases, isn't even aware of their existence.
During the 1800s, this was an active fort that was used by Denmark, not only to keep order out in the waters, but also to keep the slaves in check.
The island's only member of Congress has a seat in the US House of Representatives, but doesn't have a vote.
It was complete devastation on all three islands. You know, we're the only place in the United States that were hit by two back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes. There's much discussion about what happened in Puerto Rico, in Florida, and Texas, and other places. And so in terms of the recovery, we don't have the leverage that the other states have. Texas would not be waiting 2 years to have schools rebuilt in the manner that we are, or neither would Florida, with 2 senators and, you know, in some instances, almost 40 representatives in Congress. That's been a real issue for us, and it's always an issue. The lack of voting representation, our lack of being able to vote for president really mitigates and diminishes our voice in Washington in being able to fight for what we want.
But the islanders are helping each other. Having survived the hurricanes unscathed, Imani is helping those who aren't so fortunate.
Here we have lots of tools and the mattresses, some linens to give away as well, and then, you know, things to go inside the kitchen that people would need. We've got plates in the pantry here, you know, cups, whatever goes into making a kitchen useful and something that someone's going to be able to get enjoyment out of. And for all of our clients, they'll get a kitchen kit, which comes with, you know, pans and bowls, lots of serving utensils and plates, cups, things like that. So it's much more than just building a home, you know, or building a house. You really do need to make sure that the supplies and beds and linens and things that make it a home are really there for people.
The impact of the hurricanes wasn't confined to land, but the scene underwater gives a possible clue to why they were so intense. Global warming is believed to be changing the environment here. It can be seen in the deterioration of the coral. Local divers have been monitoring the transformation over the past few years.
After the hurricanes especially, we saw a lot of death of soft corals, which is unusual, a lot of sediment on hard corals, which also causes death, and then just basically the sediment being stirred up doesn't help either.
Marine biologists are trying to reverse the effects of climate change.
This is our coral nursery. So we've brought in fragments, small fragments of corals that otherwise would have died in the environment because they were too small to survive. And what we're doing is we're allowing them to grow out in a controlled environment so that we can grow them to a big size, and place them back out onto the reef and try to replenish the reefs that have been affected by stressors like climate change and hurricanes and things like that. This is a coral that has a disease. You can see here the white, that's where the coral has actually died. The brown is where the coral is still living, but the coral hasn't expelled its algae, it's actually completely lost its tissue. So this coral, we expect this coral probably to die within the next few days. And what's very sad is even though this is just a part of a coral, this coral took several decades to grow. Corals are the foundational animals of coral reefs. Coral reefs would not exist without the corals. And fundamental to the corals is this relationship with the algae that lives in their tissues. So when corals get stressed, though, that relationship breaks down. And one of the major stressors in today's world is global warming. Corals are the foundation of coral reefs. So without corals growing, you wouldn't have the reefs and you wouldn't have the homes for all of the organisms that live on coral reefs. Corals for humans are extremely important because coral reefs provide coastal protection to shorelines. They also provide sources for fisheries. They're also nice to look at. So here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, coral reefs are a big attraction for tourists. So it's a major driver of our economy.
So the stakes are high.
The stakes are very high. Without coral reefs, the economy of the Virgin Islands would not be very productive because tourism depends on beautiful coastal environments, and those coastal environments depend directly on coral reefs. The stakes are very high for biodiversity in the tropics in general. Without coral reefs, they are the rainforests of the sea. So what happens when you lose the rainforest? You lose the majority of the biodiversity in the oceans. So it'll be devastating to see what happens to coral reefs if we continue on the same track we've been on.
I never saw the intensity of these hurricanes like we do. They are more frequent, and thankfully, many are missing us now. But when they hit now, they hit a lot harder. We live in Hurricane Alley here. We are accustomed to hurricanes. But when you have Virgin Islanders now a little nervous because we've never seen hurricanes like these before, it's telling us that something changed.
The effect of the hurricane on the farm has been catastrophic. We actually have lost, we had a total destruction on the farm. Everything that you may see in place now wasn't there. And a lot of debris, fence were broken, animal shed were destroyed. The climate is changing significantly because everything that we know that we are accustomed to has actually been changed. We have to begin to treat our soil, our land differently. We got to begin to look at some of the damages that we ourselves were inflicting on our climate.
This girl here, I bottle fed her when she was born. And that's my pet.
There are around 500 farms on the Virgin Islands. Virtually every single one of them was affected by the hurricanes, including the one run by Frank Bermudez.
I ended up burying about 14 dead animals at that time. And then I had to deal with the fencing, the flooding, the fencing. I had to work through the flood, through the rain. If climate change continues to deteriorate the way, and at the rate it's going to be, well, just about impossible to do this.
Farms aren't the only businesses that are suffering. Although the cruise liners have returned, several of the big hotels are still undergoing repairs, and tourist numbers are down significantly.
This used to be our jewelry store, which is now closed because it couldn't sustain itself after the hurricane. This used to be a makeup store called Hermitage, and that couldn't sustain itself. It wasn't because it was just jewelry, but people were just not there for them to do that. And this one here used to be a Mecca magnet of jewelry called Imperial Jewelers, and they shut down. They were upstairs and downstairs. This here used to be a restaurant called Coconuts, a bar that closed down. This entire street has closed close to 20 doors in a matter of a year. 20 stores gone.
It's a big economic hit.
Very big. For an island where the population is 65,000, we've lost over 20,000 people, and that's a huge hit.
Do you feel you're being forgotten about?
I think we were forgotten after the first hurricane hit on September the 5th. Before the second hurricane, Maria, hit, I think right then, September 13th was the last time I think St. Thomas was mentioned on the map. I think we've been completely forgotten.
For some, the problem is not being able to forget.
The hurricane itself destroyed part of my roof. So during a hurricane, we were in a home, of course, and the roof was actually lifted. I think the stress of that was very hard because, you get anxiety every time now that there's rain or you hear hard winds, you get anxiety. I have to actually take some sleep aids to help me sleep because it's been difficult sleeping on my own ever since the storm.
Hi, thanks for coming. Have a seat.
Yawandi has been having regular counselling sessions.
This week, what we're going to do is we're going to readdress some of the goals that we outlined last week, and we're going to make sure that we're making progress.
The hurricanes have taken a toll on mental health across the island.
Depression was high in terms of individuals who would call for support. We had a grave fear for PTSD, post-traumatic, after the hurricanes, but we really didn't see the onset until a year and a half following the hurricane. So now, as individuals are coming in, we're beginning to see symptoms of PTSD. Children also are affected. They're having nightmares, recurring nightmares. The little ones have actually resorted to some of the initial behaviors of bedwetting and thumb sucking immediately following the hurricane. So people are experiencing this thing in different ways.
So this is from inside the bunker. Remember I had the camera out? This was definitely early on because the trees were still up.
Yeah.
You asked me to describe it to you, and I remember just saying that the sky is like a river because it was just all of the water coming down.
Yeah, all over, yeah. I'm glad I could stay calm and not get upset. People crying and want to go out, do this, do that. No, what can you do?
And this was before it even got bad. It's when it gets white and you can't see
I
anything.
hope we don't have any more of that stuff.
And that's a sentiment shared by virtually everyone.
It's going to take these islands a long, long time to recover from what happened here in 2017. Much of the repair work is only a temporary fix. The big fear is, of course, of another hurricane. Could these islands cope? It's a question on everyone's mind.
If you fly into the Virgin Islands, you'll see that there are people who still have blue tarps on their homes. Our children are still in modular schools. Our hospitals have not been repaired.
At a minimum, it's going to take 5 years. But given the history of the last 18 months of this recovery, I think it's going to be closer to 10 years, and that's assuming we don't have another disaster between now and then.
Just the thought is heartbreaking. I don't think we are in a place where we can sustain another Cat 5 or Cat 1 hurricane. As you can tell, based on the time you've been there, we're in a constant state of rebuilding and recovery. There's still a lot of people without the basic necessities. So just the thought, the mention of another hurricane here is heartbreaking. We're simply not ready for that.
Worst thing I ever see in my life was hurricane, and I don't want to see the next one. I'll be leaving. hurricane is coming and they say it's coming, I'm leaving.